Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third appointment of the cycle on Scelta Magistrale, dedicated to bachelor students. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that enrollments in our master degree are already open. For information, you can refer to our guidance office at the contact details you can find in the chat. Today, it's a great pleasure to have with us Professor Andrea Orbignati, Associate Professor of Sustainability and Circular Economy at our university, who will be talking about companies' transition towards a circular economy and its opportunities and challenges. To you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sharing my slides and I'm starting this presentation. It's a pleasure for me to, I would say, run this presentation about how the circular economy is, I would say, affecting the way companies are, I would say, behaving into the market and transforming their business models and operations towards this new approach, and especially for, I would say, improving their economic and sustainable performance. I will, I would say, share with you some thoughts about this new industrial approach, what circular economy is about, and why I would say it is important to talk about circular economy nowadays. There are some, okay, I put a brief presentation of myself, but Elena already presented myself in a great way. The only thing that I would like to add to my presentation is that I have the privilege to be the co-director of the Green Transition Hub, which is our competence center here in Luke that works at the intersection between research activity, training activity, and dissemination activity concerning sustainability and circular economy topic. A group of more or less 20, I would say, people that are involved among junior researcher, PhD candidates, and external, I would say, collaborators. And the group is, I would say, still growing, and I would say it is becoming, I would say, a reference point also at national level around these important and relevant topics. I would like to present you, I would say, three main, I would say, points. I'm going to introduce what the circular economy is about, and some case studies about the how this approach was implemented by some companies, and finally some conclusions and takeaways. First of all, why it is important to talk about circular economy? There are some, I would say, structural issues that have to be managed. And they, first of all, regard the fact that we are really exploiting a lot of resources for satisfying our needs. So there is, I would say, an overconsumption of resources from a certain point of view. And on the other end, there's, I would say, overconsumption of resources is damaging in some way our planet. This overexploitation is causing, I would say, important levels of greenhouse gas emissions, and I would say important requests of energy, for example, or water consumption. So it is a matter in some way to redesign if you want, our economic system. And this is the why the circular economy approach is becoming very, very relevant, and has become, I would say, very relevant in the last years. There is, I would say, an interesting, I would say, graph that I want to show you, and I will go back to the slides, because this graph is really related with what I have just told you. So if you see, this is a graph representing the overshoot day. So it is exactly the day when we have completely consumed the resources that the Earth is able to regenerate in a year. And you can see that in more or less 50 years, we have depauperated the half of the resources that the Earth is able to regenerate, because the green bar represent the availability of resources, the red bars represent the unavailability, I would say, the lack of resources. So what this graph is telling us is that while in the 1970 year, the Earth was able to regenerate the resources, in 2024, we are not giving more the time to the Earth to regenerate the resources that are required for realizing new products. So we have really a structural problem, okay? And this is the why the circular economy approach is might be a key lever that has to be exploited for reverting, I would say, and changing this market trajectories. One of the main, I would say, issues, one of the main causes, I would say, of this, I would say, situation is assumed to be the linear economy. So the linear economy is a traditional, I would say, way of conceiving the economic system. We take the resources from the earth, we process these resources to realize new products, and we sell the products into the market. We commercialize the products into the market. And, when the products are no more able to satisfy the needs of the customer, they are usually, I would say, disposed as a waste. You can understand that this linear model of doing business is no more sustainable. The why? Because at the, I would say, upstream phase of the chain, we have a lack of resources. So the earth is no more able, I would say, to regenerate the resources. And at the downstream phase of the chain, the problem is related with the fact that there is an important amount of waste that has to be managed. Okay, so our economic system, from a really structural point of view, is unbalanced. Okay, so it is a matter of rebalancing in some way the system. Okay, so the take, make, dispose economic model that is the I would say the assumption of the linear economy does not work more. Okay, the why? Because the amount of resources and materials is no more sufficient for satisfying the increasing level of demands for new products. Okay, so along with the overshoot day, it is a matter of the circular economy approach. I'm going to show you a very short video just to, I would say, let you better, I would say, understand what we are talking about, and then we will discuss about some insights that the video is able to provide.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food. Energy is provided by the sun. Things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
So I think this is a very, very interesting, I would say, video that helps, I would say, at least to focus a bit the topic, no? So the idea is that we can really build capital in some way from the waste that is generated from the production activity, for example. But the real, I would say, objective is to find the right balance between what happens in the nature and what happens in companies, okay? The video refers to two cycles, the biological ones and the technical ones. The biological cycles reflect how the nature works, okay? And the nature works perfectly without the presence of, I would say, people, okay? But people exist on the other end, and they have to, I would say, balance their activities, which are represented by the technical cycles, okay, with the, I would say, natural, I would say, behavior of the planet, okay? And the video says this is possible in some way, okay? But for making this balance to happen effectively, we have to redesign our economic system. We have to redesign how the products are designed. We have to rethink the production processes. We have to, I would say, make our, I would say, customers or clients more involved into the economic system or into the circular economic system. Indeed, for example, one of the passages of the video is what if we change the way we view the ownership model? Because we know in a linear model, the producers sell their products to the market. When anytime that we sell something into the market, we are transferring the ownership of the product, okay, to the producer, to the customer, okay? So in a linear economy, the customer becomes the owner of a certain product, okay? So, and the customer decides also for the end of life of that product, okay? If we change the way we view ownership, for example, through implementing a pay-per-use model or a pay-per-performance model, we ask our customer to pay for using the product and to give back the product when the product reaches its end of life. Okay, so in this way, what does it happen? That when the product reaches the end of its life, given the customer is no more the owner of the product cannot be disposed. The product comes back to the producer, and it will be the producer to decide for the end of the product, okay? There are other two elements that, from my perspective, are very, very important when we talk about circular economy. And this circular economy transition is not just about the change of the view of the ownership model, but it is also about the typology, for example, of the resources that we use for realizing certain products, or for example, the kind of energy resources that we use, for example, for charging the production plants. Okay, the video talks about biodegradable materials, compostable materials, or however, materials that are able to reduce the environmental impact. And from the point of view of the energy flows, so the energy flows, the passage from the exploitation of fossil fuels, okay, to, I would say, renewable energy sources, okay. In a way, we are able to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, the redesign process. The redesign process which attempts in some way to reduce the waste generated during a production process and, as a consequence, the pollution. So I think that although the video provides in some way several insights, okay, about how the circular economy can be implemented, I think that we can in some way frame the circular economy potential in these three main areas, okay? The redesign of product and processes, the exploitation of certain typologies of resources, and the passage from an ownership model to a pay-per-use or a pay-per-performance model to keep the products and materials continuously in use, okay? I would say there are a couple of models that are very, very interesting that can explain in some way also how the circular economy can be put in place. from a very practical, I would say, perspective. The first model is so the figure that you find on the left of the graph represents the so-called decoupling principle. So the idea is that we have a limited stock of resources. Okay, so we can exploit the limited stock of resources that the Earth is able to provide us until a certain point. Okay, until a certain, I would say, level of the demand. After a certain level of the demand, when the demand continues to grow, but we have finished the stock of resources, we can satisfy, of course, the demand, but we can satisfy that increasing level of the demand through reusing, I would say, the inputs, the resources and materials that are already present in the economic system. So what you see here in the first phase of the graph, there is no decoupling. Okay, the limited stock of resources is able to satisfy the economic production. Okay, the economic production is a synonymous of level of the demand. In the central, I would say, part of the graph, it starts the decoupling between the economic production and I would say, the need of inputs. And in the third phase, and I think the third phase is purely, I would say, theoretical, but from a theoretical point of view, it makes sense. There is an absolute, I would say, decoupling. Okay. What does it mean? That we can reuse several times same resources and materials for satisfying the economic production. The second model, which is the one on the right, is the so-called butterfly diagram. It was realized by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is the most, I would say, iconic and famous organization worldwide, which is in charge of disseminating the circular economy principle worldwide. And also the video that I showed you before was realized by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And here you can really find what the video says, because you have on the left part of the model, you have the green cycles that represent the biological cycles. And if you look into the cycles, you can clearly, I would say, find some connections with the, I would say, the environmental impact. Okay, so the idea is to regenerate the natural system, to impact less, the exploitation of renewable energy sources for, I would say, polluting less. On the right side, we have the cycles in blue, which are the so-called technical cycles. So what the companies or more generally organizational entities can implement, okay, from the point of view of their production process. In the middle of the model, we have a traditional, I would say, linear chain. And you can understand, if we focus our attention on the technical cycles, what we understand. We understand several things. That we have outer cycles, first of all, and inner cycles. Okay? And if we focus on the outer cycles, okay, you can understand that the outer cycle, in this case, is represented by the recycling, I would say, practice. Anytime that we recycle a product to generate secondary raw materials, these secondary raw materials, in order to become a product and to be commercialized into the market, has to, I would say, remake in some way all the phases of the linear value chain. If we are able to work in the inner cycles, so for example, through maintenance activity, through repairing activities, or for example, through reusing immediately a certain product or a certain materials, okay, the resource or the product can be reintroduced into the economic system with, I would say, less costs, no intervention or a very intervention that require marginal, I would say, costs to be sustained, or at least less costs compared to the recycling activity, and less time. Okay, so anytime that we think about the implementation of a circular economy, we should take into account that we are not talking about a recycling economy, okay, but we are talking about a really a circular economy, okay? So the recycling can be part of the game, okay, but it is not a synonymous of a circular economy, okay? Because recycling means that we are no more able to exploit an economic value, okay, from a certain product, okay? If we are still able to, I would say, exploit a residual value in a certain product, please go to other activities. Go for maintenance, go for repairing, go for reconditioning, go for remanufacturing, okay? Please take the recycling, I would say, activity as the last option because it implies more costs, more time for a product or a resource or material for being reintroduced into the economic system, okay? I can, I would say, go over these slides because these are just a much more detailed, they provide much more details about what I was telling you, so about the biological cycles and the technical cycles, okay? I want to show you what we mean with redesign practices. So you can see here what we can really mean with the redesign. So when this is another, I would say, way for understanding the technical cycles. Okay, so you see that the recycling, which is in the outer cycle of the technical one, is at the bottom line of this scheme to say there is no more value to exploit from a resource. Okay, so the recycling activity still reflects more a linear economy, okay? Anytime that you move from the outer cycle to the inner cycle, it is like you are moving in this table from the bottom to the top, okay? So we are addressing more a circular economy approach, okay? We have already talked about the ownership, so the shift from, I would say, a really ownership model to a pay-per-use or pay-per-performance model. There are some other videos in the slides, but I'm going to share the slides with you, but we do not have enough time to show these additional videos. And the kind of the resources that can be used, okay? Either biodegradable, compostable, or however, resources that are able to reduce the environmental impact, okay? There are some, I would say, this is, I would say, an interesting case of a company. It is called the Vegea. This is a company that I would say realized a very interesting technology that is able to transform the waste of generated during the production process of wine into a synthetic material, okay? So the potential here is that we are interconnecting two different chains, okay? And we are transforming what is considered a waste in a supply chain into a new, I would say, raw material or a new material that can be exploited for, I would say, realizing new products. In this case, Vegea is an interesting example of a company that is able to connect the supply chain of wine production with the fashion, I would say, industry, because the synthetic materials that is realized by reprocessing the waste coming from the wine production process is used for realizing clothes, for example, or other fashion accessories that are sold into the fashion industry. Very, very interesting, I would say, case. If we implement the circular economy principles in what is this, I would say, linear value chain, we have said that, first of all, if we change the view, if we change the way we view the ownership model, we have said once the product has reached the end of its life, it does not become more a waste, but it is taken back by the producer, because the client is no more the buyer or the owner of the product, but he or she pays for the usage, it pays for the usage of the product. So I would say the product in some way can be reintroduced within the economic system. And of course, for the producer, it means a new revenue model. Okay, the producer does not sell more directly its product, okay, but it is a matter of, I would say, product as a service model. Think, for example, now the producer of an electric car, okay, and let's suppose that this producer has implemented this pay-per-use model with one or more of their customers, okay. In a certain moment, the electric vehicle, according to the circular economy approach, is taken back by the producer, okay. Let's suppose also that the producer has implemented some redesign practices that allow the producer itself to disassemble the car and to take out from the car the several components, okay? One of the main components that we can consider in to an electric vehicle is the battery, okay? Of course, the life cycle of the battery is, I would say, calculated in cycles, okay, that the battery performs. Maybe if when the product is taken back by the producer, maybe the battery does not make sense to reintroduce it into a new electric vehicle, because maybe the battery now will have just some residual cycles, okay? But these residual cycles means that the battery still has economic value, okay? So in which way we could exploit this battery? This battery could, for example, enter another supply chain, for example, the chain of the energy storage producer, okay? And could be used for example, storage, okay, the electricity produced by a photovoltaic panel. In this case, what I am doing, I'm first of all reducing the amount of waste and the disposing activity. And in a second aspect, I'm creating the so-called industrial symbiosis. I'm upcycling the value of the battery when exploiting the battery in a new chain and not in the original chain, okay? And this is, if you think a bit about this phenomenon, this is the last part of the video that we saw together before. We are not just talking about players in the same supply chain that redesign their business models and their operation, but we are also talking about players belonging to different supply chains that start collaborating with each other. And this is really, I think, the power of the circular economy approach, okay? But also, if you think about Vegea, maybe until several years ago, maybe it was quite impossible to think about the relationship between the supply chain of wine production and the supply chain of the fashion industry, okay? The circular economy approach and the circular economy thinking gives us the possibility, okay? Gives us the possibility to also think out of the box, okay? And to really create market opportunities, okay? And ideally, the, I would say, same cycles that we thought for the original supply chain can be now thought also for the new supply chain, okay? So from, I would say, theoretical point of view, we could create infinite, okay, cycles of technical, both, and biological ones, okay? I would jump these slides just to go to some case studies that I think are very, very interesting. The first one is the Renault case, okay? So it takes into account the example of the battery. So the first life cycle of the battery is in the electric vehicle produced by Renault. The second, I would say, life of the battery is into an energy storage system. Also, when the battery ends completely its cycles in to the energy storage system, it can be recycled for generating secondary raw materials that can be exploited for new production processes. Another interesting case, I could jump this one, is the case of Desso. It is very, very interesting one. It is a producer of carpets, okay? And the company really realized an interesting, very, very interesting business model, because the business model of the company is based on this particular technology, which is called Refinity. The Refinity is able in some way to disassemble the carpet in the several yarns, okay, that constitute the carpet, and to also separate the yarns from the so-called bitumen, which is a dirty, I would say, residual or dirty elements that are still, I would say, in the yarns, okay? And this separation technique is very, very interesting. The why? Because the company, and this is something that is reported in the sustainability report of the company, you see that anything starts from the production process, okay? The carpet is not sold in a traditional way into the market, but they call this, I would say, this pay-per-use model, pay per meter square. So they ask their customer to pay for the meter square they need of the carpet. When they do not need more the carpet, the company takes back the carpet. When the carpet re-enters the production process, I would say, it's the time of implementing the Refinity technology. The Refinity technology that separates the carpet into the several yarns and from the bitumen, okay? And you see here the inner cycle is consists in reusing immediately in the production process those yarns that are characterized still high quality, okay? The yarns that have I would say, a medium quality are sent to a supplier of the company, and if I'm not wrong, it should be Aquafil. That is a supplier that has realized a technology which is able to regenerate, I would say, the yarns, and the regenerated yarns are sent back to the company for a new production process. The bitumen is the really outer cycle, okay, enters, you see, the dirty residuals that was separated from the yarns, enters, I would say, the road and roofing industry. In this case, we are not upcycling a material, but we are downcycling them. But we are also, in this case, creating what? An industrial symbiosis phenomenon, because we are connecting the, I would say, the supply chain of the carpet industry, okay, with the new supply chain of road and roofing industry, okay? Then in the slides, there are several examples that I provided, but we are, I think, out of time. A very, very last, I would say, yeah, my this is interesting. I can show you also because there is myself and the previous rector, Federico Visconti, in the picture with these two, I would say, guys that funded this company. It is called Cycled. And they, I would say, regenerate in some way the tires of the wheels of bicycles, okay, and realize bets, okay. So you can, I would say, imagine, okay, the process, because we are connecting, I would say, the chain of, I would say, bicycles or bicycle producers with, I would say, also in this case, the fashion industry, because the belt becomes an accessory that can be used in another chain, okay. Very, very last, I would say, very, very last comment, and then I leave the floor for some questions if there are some questions. We have to take into account that we are still, I would say, encountering some issue with the penetration rate of the circular economy, both at the European level and the circular level. Consider that at the European level, the circularity rate, the circularity penetration rate is around 8%, while worldwide is around 7%, 7.2%. So there is, if we could be able to double these figures, we could, I would say, completely eliminate the climate change. Okay, so this is just for giving you some additional insights, but you know, moving from a 7% or 8% to 14% or 60% of circularity penetration rate means that the effort that we have to put in place is very, very strong. And the effort, remember, is not just for the companies that have to redesign their business models and production process, but it is also a matter of ourselves as customers or consumers, that we have to rethink in some way our mechanisms of consumption if we want to be part of the circular economy game. Okay, I can conclude with this, and thank you, of course, for joining the webinar and for listening myself my presentation.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for your interesting lesson. Really, really interesting. If you have some question, you can ask or write it in the chat. We have still Andrea here for a few minutes, so we can ask him if you have some questions. If there are no questions, let me thank you again for being with us today. and I will see you at our last webinar next Monday, same time, when Professor Nicola Saporiti will be speaking about AI and the future changes tied to the use of AI in industries. So we will have another interesting moment with Nicola, and we will be happy to have you for this last appointment.